In this episode of Detroit Performs, a funk and R&B band creates the feeling of a Detroit block party. A former DSO bass player is spreading love for classical music, and an artist who uses his sculptures to make music. It's all ahead on this edition of Detroit Performs.
Funding for Detroit Performs is provided by the Michigan Council for Arts and Cultural Affairs and the National Endowment for the Arts, and by contributions to your PBS station from viewers like you. Thank you.
Hello and welcome to Detroit Performs. I'm your host, DJ Oliver, and today I'm taking you to the Fillmore in Detroit. This historic venue, located in Detroit's entertainment district, originally opened in 1925 as a movie house. Today, it provides a stage for some of the premier bands of our time. Our first segment is a rock, funk, and soul band who could definitely hold their own on the Fillmore stage. The Infatuations are a celebration of every Motor City style. Imagine you're at a summertime block party in Motown. Sit back and enjoy the sounds and the story of the Infatuations.
We're not trying to chase a curve. We're trying to focus on crafting a better song when we write our songs.
Bringing it to you, you better watch your back from now.
For me, real music, it accomplishes things. Music, is powerful, and when you treat it right, then you can use that power to make things happen, make things change, like Bob Marley.
So don't you worry about the great unknown, 'cause I'll be standing here for better or worse, you know.
Right now, when you look at the industry, I feel like there's so many what I like to call microwave artists, and all the passion, the musicianship, the talent, all the heart, the blood, the tears, the sweat that goes into it is all lost on a lot of this stuff.
Terrestrial radio, there's some changes that need to be made. People are starved. We get the compliments from older people, younger people, and in between. Some of the compliments are, oh my gosh, this takes me back. Some of it's, holy smokes. Like, you turned me on to some other great music. It's nice to hear when somebody checked out George Clinton because they heard that was an influence of us. That's pretty cool. I guess we hope to carry that torch. The Infatuations was born, I think, officially April 4th of 2009. I think we're a really good representation of, a hybrid of a lot of different music. From a fan perspective, we're definitely fans of music first, and I think that shows in our writing and our performance and the sounds that we choose, from guitar tones to bass tones, drum tones, etc. The Infatuations musically are heavily influenced by a lot of music that's originated in Detroit, Motown being a huge influence on us, and a lot of the Detroit rock and roll that you hear that's come out of here from, I guess, the 60s up until now even. George Clinton is a Detroit guy. Stevie Wonder, Marvin Gaye, Aretha Franklin, any old and soul and Motown artists. All this stuff came out of here. So I would say our first influence is Detroit and the things that came here. Even going back to the jazz stuff and blues stuff too.
I think there's something you can pull from everywhere, and if you don't pull influences from all those different places, I think you're kind of depriving yourself of something as an artist.
Kendrick joined the band in 2014, in December of 2014, after our former lead singer, Caleb Gutierrez, had left.
I was a solo artist before I came into the band. I saw him at Shane Park, and I think that was my first encounter with the Infatuations. It's really hard, for a band or even just another singer to make me stop and go, wow. And they really did it. I was impressed. I mean, they showed that they work at this. And that it means something to them, and that really infatuated me with the Infatuations. Christian is a powerhouse. In addition to being a crazy guitarist, Christian, you know, he's obviously a writer.
So Nick Bainan, he's our other guitar player. I met Nick when I was teaching guitar. Nick is a funky player, a great rock player, and he brings a sweet fro to the table too. Bobby, our drummer, I like to call him the weapon. So Bobby is just one of the most consistent musicians out of all the musicians I've ever worked with. Our bassist, Wolf, he joined the band in 2010. He and our drummer, Bobby, really have a solid rhythm section together, and I can't imagine like doing this without these guys, you know, with any of these guys at this point. We also recently added some female backup singers. We have Liz Gerard, who's an incredible vocalist, and her own right is a lead singer. She has a band called Shotgun Soul. And then we have a gal named Jillian Melissa who recently joined us on vocals. And Jillian can pull off some of this crazy Mariah Carey type stuff that we're just waiting to take advantage of and try to blend into what we're doing sonically with the Infatuations.
And I'm longing just to kiss you, to hold you, baby.
The atmosphere I think we're trying to create is looking out in the audience and seeing a wide array of people having a good time, getting along.
When you look at our shows, everybody's there, you know, 6 to 60, black, white, purple, green, everybody's there. And I think especially right now with all this tension we got going on with race relations and all of that, like I think, you know, this is what we need.
I think the biggest reason to come to an Infatuations concert is to have a fantastic time and forget about all the minutia that life brings us. Just a great place to have a good time. That's my favorite place to be, is on that stage with those guys and gals.
I started thinking we'd be better off alone, 'cause it feels like I'm dancing on my name.
We're all writing collectively at this point.
I'm not going to say that every single song that's written by the Infatuations has this specific meaning we're trying to get across. You know, in a lot of cases, you know, we might have sat down and we were just trying to write a tune.
And she knows, she knows how to make you feel real good.
And when that thing is finished, if whatever it's become is that, you know, if it's that thing that's got a powerful message, if it's really trying to convey a certain thing, then we'll let it be that. But I don't think we set out to make something specific, you know, like that. We just let the music evolve. And I think that's when the best music is made. Monster is basically a warning to the sweet little young girl who is all starry-eyed and in love, you know, with me, but I just want to let her know that, hey, I'm a monster. So you just need to be prepared because I'm going to take you on a ride.
Girl, I'm a monster. I'm the big bad wolf.
I like the beep. I think it's one of my favorite songs to perform. Dancing on My Knees is always a fun one to play. And Diamond Disco. I mean, I'm playing disco in that song. I'm playing like Eagles, country, southern rock guitar. And I'm playing, you know, soul music in that tune, and rock guitar. There's a lot going on.
Diamond Disco is all about what happened in San Francisco. Marco and Christian wrote that song, but it's all about San Francisco, meeting a girl named Diamond. You just have to listen to that song, man. It's a good one. It's a real good one.
One crazy night in Frisco, there with Diamond Disco.
What do I want people to feel as they listen to my music? I want them to feel what they need to feel. I just want them to get whatever it is that they need in that moment in time, because like I said, it's all about making a difference.
Leave the light on, baby, and I will come over.
I want to see us right next to the names of all the great ones. You know, when you mention the Temptations, later on down the line, you're going to mention the Infatuations.
Yesterday morning, I stared out my window. I picked up my pen, girl, and wrote you this song.
To find out more about the Infatuations, head to DetroitPerforms.org. Highland Park native Rick Robinson played bass for the Detroit Symphony Orchestra for 22 years, where he began Cut Time in 1993 to share symphonic music with churches and schools. In 2010, he joined the worldwide classical revolution movement to bring this music into bars, clubs, and community centers of Detroit.
Start the revolution. Here we go. 1, 2.
Well, I love all music, of course, but classical speaks to me in a very special way. I see how we can shape it, how it's sexy, how it can be violent, how it can be profound, and I want to share that with all kinds of people who I know, but who avoid the concert hall. I think today that there is a call for a new tradition, even around fine arts. And we could probably preserve the traditional concert experience as long as this new tradition welcomes people at whatever level they are. So in a bar or a club or a community center, it doesn't matter if people clap between the movements or call out in support of a musician who's doing a solo. So in the late 50s, Leonard Bernstein did the famous Young People's Concerts, and it was an eye-opener, not only for children who watched them, but also for their parents, for adults who were curious about this music and why people would play it, or how it got to be such a wonderful way of doing music. So all of us musicians now have to become Leonard Bernsteins. I've been asked, well, you must play jazz, you know, why don't you play jazz? Or I'll bet your jazz is really good. And I'm like, well, no, I actually like classical. In fact, I even love classical. Classical's changed my life.
Anyway, so we're so glad to be here. Classical Revolution Detroit, again, is the name of the series. With our Knight Foundation grant, we can span to 3 times per month across the city of Detroit. So that's just what we're going to do. I'm so glad to be here in Corktown for our first time. We're going to continue now with a Bona Fide Symphony by Ludwig van Beethoven. This is probably the St. Cece's premiere, so sit back and order another beer, and one for me too. Thanks.
In classical music, it's about making these forms take our audience on a journey, a spiritual journey. In fact, it's a lot like being in a church, and everyone's respectful and polite and waiting for the service to lift them out of their seats, lift us out of our bodies into our own imaginations, essentially. So it's imperative that we have art that lifts us out of our own experience. Classical music does that for a lot of us. Cut time in music means 2 beats per bar, and it indicates a fast tempo or easy swinging beat, and I use that to indicate we need to make classical music easy and swinging and fast and lively for new audiences. So cut time is a great way to introduce classical music to people who don't come to Orchestra Hall, where I used to play with the Detroit Symphony Orchestra. I want to show everyone in my community that classical music has something to offer them. And as a composer, I've been able to show that better than any other way, by blending some urban pop and familiar soul and gospel riffs in with my classical compositions. I've gone from being very art-centric musician, like most of my colleagues, focusing on these fine details and making sure the music has the impact that we would like to see, to becoming one who's audience-centric, putting myself in the seat, if you will, of people I'd like to see come to our concerts, so that the music really matters to them. And that's a different kind of artistry in order to be sure to make that connection, be sure to connect with the audience as opposed to the classical tradition. My best moments are at Classical Revolution Detroit when some young person comes up to me and says, "Wow, that was really fantastic. I didn't know I liked classical music like that. When are you coming back?" That for me is priceless.
To find out more about Rick Robinson and all the artists you saw featured here today, head to DetroitPerforms.org. Now, let's check out some upcoming events happening in and around the D. To discover more events in Greater Detroit, visit ixity.com. Musician and artist Michael Bashaw creates still sculptures that aren't only interesting to look at, they create a unique sound, and Bashaw knows how to tune it. Let's take a look.
Years ago, I didn't really want to give up music and I didn't want to give up art, so I found a way to fuse those two. I was inspired by a number of people. Some key figures were Harry Partch, who was a maverick composer who built instruments to accommodate this 43-tone scale that he worked in. I was really inspired by him. If I just played music for a living, I would have to really struggle. Or if I just made sculpture, it would probably be a struggle for me. But the fact that I can combine the two, it keeps it interesting for me, and it also is a way to make a living in both fields, but fusing the two, it's kind of best of both worlds. I have come up with some ideas and dreams that I end up playing around with and making something out of. Usually I'm intrigued by what a sound might be, and so I'll come up with an idea to try to actualize that. I ask myself, what would happen if I enlarged something that was, a handheld instrument? How would it sound if it's 10 feet tall instead of something you hold in your hand? What if it's made out of metal instead of wood, or a gourd or something? And then I go about experimenting and try to figure something out and make it look interesting and evocative, and also something that you feel like you really want to play. And originally, when I started making musical sculptures, I wasn't so much thinking about doing performances with them, but I was interested in creating things that other people could play, that it's something I could put out in public and maybe along a riverbank or in a park somewhere, and people could come up and make music together. People who may be total strangers might be able to have some kind of conversation. It's trial and error. It's playing around on them. It's kind of just experimenting and seeing what works. This may not have worked for you. I don't know. It may, but works for me. If you approach them like as if they're a normal instrument, you could get really frustrated maybe, There are techniques that I've discovered over the years, and they become more than just one instrument, depending on how they're played, depending on what kind of mallet you use or what technique you use. I've done concerts in colleges where the art department is more interested in them than the music department, if we're incorporating students in the performance. A lot of visual arts students get excited about it. You know, it is what it is. Like I said, you have to accept them on their own terms, so that's okay with me. It's great when you're playing with other musicians, and it doesn't happen all the time, but when it does, it's the best feeling when it's almost like you're on automatic pilot. Everybody's there together, and you get a sense of the whole room lifting up, you know? And you're doing it, you know, you're doing it, you're creating it, but the audience is also helping to create that feeling. And that's the best. That's what you go for. If I'm up in the studio working, time just evaporates. You lose a sense of time when you're really in the moment and working on something. And hours can go by and you realize you have lost your sense of time, and it's a great feeling. It's the best. You feel like you're doing what your purpose is, you know. I can't see spending a lot of time on something I really don't have a lot of juice for. So I've got to get excited about the idea. And even if it's a commission, I don't just make something and fabricate something for money. I've got to feel good about it. I'll have an idea, I'll focus on something, I'll start playing with it, and then I'll rest a little while with it, and know that some other part has to come along and join up with the rest of what I've started. So I'll go about my day. I may find something in the street that I include in a piece, and I'll have happy surprises, and it'll go a whole other direction from what I originally intended. Even if I do a lot of drawings first, as I start working on something, it may take on a life of its own, and I may go in a direction that I really hadn't anticipated. So it's always fun. Allowing for that to happen. Can't be too rigid. Got to allow for some play. My wife and partner Sandy has been a critical part of this whole equation. Not only has she been supportive of what I do, but she has added so much to this ensemble, to the compositions that we've created over the years. She's a really fine songwriter. That's all played into the puzzle of light as well. Improvisation is a big part of what I do. And so I think there's something appealing about that coming from medieval music and jazz. And then music from other places. I've always been intrigued by different sonic palettes. And you listen to music from around the globe, and there are sounds that are just amazing. And I always wonder, how did they make this? And what is that instrument like? How is it played? And that's kind of a big influence on me.
And that wraps it up for this edition of Detroit Performs. As always, for more arts and culture, head to DetroitPerforms.org, where you'll find featured videos, blogs, and information on upcoming arts events. Also, check us out on Facebook and Twitter. I'd like to thank the Fillmore for having us out here today. Beyond the amazing acts they have performing here, just the beauty alone of this historic building is something to enjoy. Until next Tuesday, get out there and show the world how Detroit performs, y'all. I'm DJ Oliver. Thanks for watching, guys.
Funding for Detroit Performs is provided by the Michigan Council for Arts and Cultural Affairs and the National Endowment for the Arts, and by contributions to your PBS station from viewers like you. Thank you.